So Andy, one of the things that really struck a chord in the book with me, because it's something I really believe in, and I think sometimes it's quite difficult for people to get their finger on, is you talk about a really important culture, an Uber culture. So you just explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, culture is often seen as being the sort of really soft side of the business, but I actually think it's the hardest to grow and develop. And our very simple definition of culture is the way we do things around here. And it's the way we do things deliberately, not so deliberately, consciously, unconsciously. And it's this whole feel, almost, of the business. But what we see in 3D businesses is that they do clearly spell out what that culture is. So the Uber bit stands for everybody understands what's expected of them. There's clear behaviours that we expect from our people. That the systems are built to reinforce that culture, whether that's recruitment, the way we actually hire people. People are engaged and empowered and enabled to actually deliver those things, and they're rewarded and recognised for doing it. So I think a great measure of the culture of business is what are people rewarded for around here.
It's interesting. So I think a lot of businesses, would you say this yourself, are guilty of kind of allowing culture to evolve rather than kind of taking control and making sure they establish something that's really positive and worthwhile? Is that something that you see a lot?
Absolutely. In the early days, the person setting up his or her business is the culture. But as they grow, and very often they recruit people in their own likeness, so it's similar. But as they get bigger and bigger, the danger is that gets diluted. So which is, to me, is why it's about clearly spelling it out. People often say it's common sense. But common sense to a 50-year-old businesswoman isn't necessarily the same common sense to a 17-year-old apprentice. So sometimes we have to spell out what those behaviours are that we actually want and reaffirm them, not in a negative way. Equally, it's not just about putting up lots of wonderful posters. It's got to be built into the way we do stuff.
So how does a business do that? So you've got an owner and it's growing, and you're starting to say, well, we've got to identify this a little bit more. How does a business go about kind of articulating that to the wider staff, as it were?
Yeah, I think the starting point is spelling it out in your own head, if it's your own business, what are your core values. But the bit for me that I actually see is a key thing is turning those values into real behaviours. So I'll give you an example. I had a client that one of their core values was teamwork. And we said, well, what should somebody who's living that value do? And somebody said we were working as a team, and they said, well, if they were asked to help somebody, they would do so. And we said, no, that's just doing your job. Offering help without being asked is a specific behaviour that would say this is somebody living in line with our behaviours. So it's proactive behaviours that you want to get from your people. And my experience is don't just do it at the top. Make sure that the people involved in living these things help maybe shape them and get involved in doing them.
So everybody has a say in how that works.
Yeah, but it's not designing it by committee. It's still got to come from the leadership. The role of the leaders is to demonstrate this stuff. But I think equally, actually you've got to make sure that they're actually living it. I had one client that came to a conference that I was speaking at, and culture was competitive advantage was the title. And I said, I love going into businesses and getting a feel for the culture. And he said, Andy, I'm fascinated by this culture stuff because we haven't got a culture at our place. And I said, you have? He said, no, we haven't. I'm telling you, if I came to your business, I get a feel for the culture of your business. He goes, no, nobody gives a damn at our place. That's your culture. And it's the leadership we've got to create and share that if we do it. So it's, again, a bit cheesy, we talk about championing the champions, which is encouraging and supporting, recognising those that do it, but challenging the challengers and maybe dealing with those that aren't. And not necessarily, booting them, and it's actually just putting your arm around them saying, these are the behaviours we want, how can we help you live them?
And how many behaviours do you think a company can manage? Because one of the things is you could list 50, couldn't you? Say, well, these are all the behaviours we want, and clearly no one's going to remember all that. So what's manageable for a business?
I think very often people do have too many, and for me, again, there's no set rules, but sort of if there's 5 or 6 core values, it might be sort of 2 or 3 behaviours for those to sort of reinforce what those key proactive things are that people do. I had a client of mine, one of their key behaviours that they had in everything that they did was use good judgment.